The day my daughter looked into my eyes and quietly said, "Dad, you'll have to live without hearing aids." I smiled as if her words didn't hurt. The doctor had explained that my hearing would keep getting worse without them, but I didn't want my daughter to feel guilty. So I simply nodded and told her I'd manage. That same afternoon, I watched her walk into a downtown bank and hand her father-in-law a cashier's check for $40,000. Everyone hugged. Everyone smiled. I stood across the street pretending I hadn't seen a thing. In that moment, I realized silence can be louder than any sound I've ever heard. If you enjoy emotional family stories with unforgettable twists and meaningful life lessons, I'd truly appreciate you subscribing to Behind Dad. And before we continue, I'd like to mention that the pictures you see throughout this video are creative visual dramatizations inspired by this story. They help tell the story, but are not real photographs from my family's life. My name is William Carter. I'm 74 years old, and until recently I believed my daughter Emily would always put family first. My late wife, Margaret, used to tell me that hearing someone's voice was one of life's greatest blessings. After she passed away 5 years ago, I held on to those words every single day. As my hearing slowly faded, I missed little things most people never think about. Birds singing outside my bedroom window, rain tapping softly against the roof. Even my granddaughter's quiet laughter sometimes disappeared before reaching my ears. The specialist told me modern hearing aids would give much of that back. They weren't cheap, but they weren't impossible either. When I finally gathered enough courage to ask Emily for help, she looked uncomfortable. She avoided my eyes before softly saying, "Dad, we just can't afford them right now." I immediately apologized for asking. I even told her my hearing wasn't that bad, although we both knew I was lying. She hugged me, kissed my forehead, and left. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting on my porch, convincing myself everything would somehow work out. The next day, my neighbor accidentally mentioned seeing Emily celebrating at the bank. Curious, I drove there myself. Through the front window, I watched her hand a $40,000 cashier's check to her father-in-law while everyone shook hands and smiled. My heart sank. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about realizing my daughter had looked into my eyes and chosen someone else's comfort over my chance to hear the voices I loved. 4 days later, just after sunset, someone quietly knocked on my front door. Standing there was Emily's father-in-law. Without saying much, he slipped a sealed envelope into my hand and whispered, "William, please read this before Emily comes tomorrow. She has no idea I'm here." I stood there holding the sealed envelope while Emily's father-in-law, Robert, quietly looked down at the ground. He seemed deeply ashamed. I invited him inside, and we sat across from each other in my small kitchen. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, he took a slow breath and said, "William, I accepted that check because I believed Emily was using money she had saved over many years. I had no idea you needed hearing aids." His voice cracked as he admitted he had only learned the truth 2 days earlier during a family dinner. My daughter accidentally mentioned that she couldn't help me because my hearing aids were too expensive. Robert immediately realized something wasn't right. He couldn't stop thinking about it. He gently nodded toward the envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were copies of the cashier's check, several bank records, and a handwritten letter. Robert explained that after hearing what Emily had said, he quietly asked his bank manager where the money had come from. The records showed the funds had come directly from an investment account my late wife Margaret and I had created years ago. Emily had legal access to help me manage emergencies, but instead she withdrew the money without ever telling me. Reading those documents made my chest feel heavy. I wasn't just heartbroken. I felt completely lost. I kept wondering how my little girl, the same child who once held my hand crossing every street, could now walk away from my greatest need without looking back. Robert then reached into his jacket and placed another item on the table. It was a certified cashier's check made payable to the hearing clinic for the exact amount needed for my hearing aids. His eyes filled with tears as he quietly said, "I returned every dollar this morning. I refuse to keep money that should have helped you hear your family's voices again." I couldn't speak. I simply covered my face as tears rolled down my cheeks. In that moment, kindness came from the last person I ever expected. Just as I thought the surprises were over, another folded document slipped from the envelope. It was a signed statement describing a private conversation Robert had secretly recorded after Emily admitted why she really refused to help me. Before I could finish reading it, my phone rang. Attorney Michael Harris calmly said, "Mr. Carter, please don't confront your daughter tonight. Tomorrow morning, bring everything to my office. There's evidence you haven't seen yet, and once you do, nothing in your family will ever be the same. I hardly slept that night. Robert's envelope remained on my kitchen table beside Margaret's old photograph. I kept staring at it, hoping the papers would somehow change if I looked away long enough. They never did. Every page reminded me that my hearing wasn't stolen by age alone. It had also been pushed aside by someone I loved more than my own life. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply heartbroken. I kept asking myself where I had failed as a father, and whether Margaret would even recognize the family we had worked so hard to build. The next morning, I walked into Attorney Michael Harris's office carrying the envelope. Robert was already there waiting for me. Michael greeted us warmly before placing another thick file on the conference table. "William," he said softly, "what you're about to see explains why your daughter was so determined to keep you from asking questions." He slowly opened the file. Inside were investment records, withdrawal forms, emails, and security camera screenshots from the bank. Every document pointed to the same painful truth. Emily hadn't withdrawn the money because of an emergency. She had planned the transfer weeks in advance and told the bank it was for a family obligation. That obligation turned out to be the $40,000 gift to Robert. Then Michael showed me something I never expected. Several years before she passed away, Margaret had quietly updated our family trust. She left a handwritten letter explaining that if anyone ever used our savings for personal gain while neglecting the care of either parent, that person would immediately lose authority over every remaining family account. She wrote that love without responsibility eventually becomes selfishness. As I held her letter, tears blurred every word. Even after her passing, Margaret had found a way to protect me. Robert then admitted he had secretly recorded a conversation with Emily after returning the check. On the recording, Emily confessed she believed I was too old to notice, where the money had gone, and thought I could live without hearing aids for a few more years. Hearing those words crushed whatever hope I still carried inside. The room fell completely silent. Attorney Harris carefully closed the file before looking directly at me. "William," he said calmly, "tomorrow your daughter believes she's coming here to review routine trust paperwork. She has no idea Robert returned the money, the trust has already changed, and her own recorded words are waiting to be played. When she hears them, her entire world will change forever." The next morning, I walked into Attorney Michael Harris's office with a calm face, but inside I felt like my heart had already lived through a lifetime of pain. Emily arrived a few minutes later, smiling as if this were just another routine meeting. She hugged me and asked whether I was feeling all right. I smiled back because I still loved my daughter, even after everything I had learned. A father's love doesn't disappear overnight, but love can no longer protect a lie once the truth is ready to speak. Attorney Harris quietly placed Margaret's trust amendment, the bank records, the investment statements, and Robert's signed declaration on the table. Then he pressed play on the recorder. Emily's own voice filled the room as she admitted she believed I was too old to notice and could live without hearing aids for a few more years. Her face turned completely pale. She covered her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. Robert stood beside her and admitted he had returned every dollar because he refused to benefit from money that should have restored my hearing. The cashier's check had already been sent directly to the hearing clinic, and my appointment had been scheduled. Emily slowly fell to her knees beside my chair, crying harder than I had ever seen. She held my hands and whispered, "Dad, I traded your happiness for my own pride. I don't deserve your forgiveness." A few weeks later, I received my new hearing aids. The audiologist switched them on, and suddenly the world came back to life. I heard birds singing outside the clinic, children laughing in the hallway, and the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall. Then I heard my granddaughter softly say, "I love you, Grandpa." I had forgotten how beautiful those simple words could sound. I closed my eyes and thanked Margaret because, even after she was gone, her wisdom had protected me once again. Emily accepted the legal consequences of violating the trust and spent the following months proving she wanted to change through honest actions instead of empty promises. I forgave her because carrying bitterness would only steal the peace I had finally found. But I reminded her that trust returns one truthful choice at a time. If my story touched your heart, please leave a comment and tell me what you would have done in my place. Share this story with someone who believes parents deserve love while they can still hear the words, "We love you." Thank you for spending this time with me on Behind Dad. And always remember this lesson. Money can replace almost anything. But once you ignore a parent's needs, Only truth, humility, and genuine love can begin to heal the silence.